So now it's my pleasure to actually introduce one of the folks that was actually very instrumental in getting CTA started, that has played a big role in driving it forward. Mark McLaughlin, the CEO of Palo Alto Networks. You know, I could run through his incredibly impressive bio, but that's in the program, so you can all read that. What I would just say is Mark has been a great partner and friend over the years. When I was in the White House, when he was chair of the National Security Telecommunications Advisory Committee, and the other work that we've been able to do together. It's great. Mark's on the board of CTA, and so I get to work with him again in this capacity, and it's a real pleasure, Mark, and I enjoy that. So thank you.
Great, thanks a lot. Are these on? Can I make them on? No, okay. I usually like to walk around, but does it? Get that going. You gotta turn on. Well, will we figure that out? Maybe not. And that's all I have to say about that. Yeah.
Hello.
Oh, there we go. Thanks. I'd appreciate it if I could. Michael said it's to be here. It's going to work. Anyway, Mark McLaughlin, Palo Alto Networks. It's great to be here. Appreciate getting a little bit of your time, and on super important topic as well. And as Michael said, I've had the pleasure to work together with him for a number of years now, not only in government, where I had the chance to chair the NSTAC. Is that really going to work? Okay, yeah, chair the NSTAC and vice chair, and still privileged to be a member as well, and collaboration there. And then also in industry, I used to run VeriSign before Palo Alto Networks. I've been in security for a while, and have been really privileged to work with lots of folks to really move the ball forward. I'm not forget that. I have 3 microphones, and none of them work. I'll just stand here. So, what I wanted to talk a little bit about today, very much in line with the session you're having here, is how to do things differently from a cyber perspective, or thoughts about what has to happen and what has to change. I've spent the last day and a half running around Washington in a couple capacities. One is having a big conference that we put on every year, Federal Ignite, and also spending the better part of the day on Capitol Hill with the CEO of the Girl Scouts. I'll tell you a little bit about that in a second, and things that are happening there. But I want to put it all in under the umbrella topic of what dramatically has to change in cyber, a viewpoint. We can throw darts at it. But the thing that I've talked about for quite some time, Michael's talked about for quite some time, lots of people have done, we think it's time that it actually moves forward, is to stop incrementing in cyber. It's just too important. Right? And what I mean by that is that if we all believe, and I think we would, that we live in the digital age, things are going to get more digital, not less digital, that the adversary is out there and it's not going away, that the cost of compute power is going to go down and continue to do that, that the adversary is going to be more automated, and things I'm pretty sure that everybody would agree with. And we see continued problems in the digital society based on the fact that it's digital, from a security perspective, that posit that it's a matter of, at a minimum, national, if not international interest, that there to be a galvanizing effort around this that would bring to bear a lot more thoughts and leadership than we're seeing today. And I mean that not only in government, but also in industry, academia. It doesn't matter. And as Michael said a little earlier, I think that we've admired the problem for a very long time. And now can we actually just change the way we think about it? So one of the things we've been talking about a lot, over the last year's time, a lot yesterday with leaders in the government, is it time for the United States to have a cyber moonshot? Right? And what I mean by that is there's been a few times in the nation's history where something's just that important that we better figure it out. We better master it the best we can. We better have leadership on a national and an international basis around it. And I'd say that cyber's at that position for us, right? And whether we're ready for that or not, I don't know. That's what we're testing. But is it time to do something and stop incrementing? And a cyber moonshot, you have to start with some ambitious definition, like things that have fallen in those categories, whether it's the Manhattan Project, or the Mercury or Gemini programs, or things along those lines that we would associate with really national efforts, have very big ambitious ideas associated with them that are, by definition, somewhat specific and somewhat vague in nature, right? So the one we've been positing for the cyber moonshot is, let's make the internet safe in 10 years. Right? Now, I know many audiences I speak to, and I think there's lots of folks I know in this crowd already, will tell me all the reasons why that's impossible. And that's the whole point, right? Is get started. So, what if we said we're going to make the internet safe in 10 years' time? What if the government, try to catalyze the nation around that statement, as only the government can do, even though the private sector has to be unbelievably involved in that success? What if we did that, right, and said we're going to make the internet safe in 10 years? And the first thing we would argue about for sure, or talk about, or hopefully discuss would be, what does it mean, right? How do you define it? It was simple to say we're going to put a man on the moon and bring him back in 10 years. Simple to say it, super hard to do it. Lots of people thought it was impossible, but we actually knew we succeeded when we picked him out of the ocean, right, alive. And in this case, what does it actually mean to the internet safe? I don't know, right? But something to be worth debating and talking about, something that the average citizen, I think, understands if you say it to them, and something that they would say, yeah, it's about time. It's important enough. Let's get that done, right? So the overarching concept of saying, can we as a nation come together and say, we're going to do something really ambitious on something really important. We're going to define success in a giant, aggressive goal way in a time frame that will span any political administration, because it's got to be bigger than that. And 10 years may sound like a lifetime when we're sitting here talking about what we have to do this afternoon to push the cyber rock up the hill. But it's also a very short period of time if you have a big goal like that in mind. So what would that take? If we could get started on that, lots of things would happen. The first is we would decide whether that's the right goal. We would define what that means. And then we'd also define lots of, I'll call it, subtopics underneath that. Some would be in technology, some would be in diplomacy, some would be in law enforcement, some would be in the education system, and there'd be a lot of things that we'd have to figure out. But at a minimum, in trying to figure those things out, we'd have some definition of what does success look like, as opposed to today where I think we're everybody's working really hard, but I'm not sure we've got an organizing principle as to what we're working against. And I'm not saying that we're ever done with cybersecurity either. I don't think that would be the case. But can we really move the ball forward on this in a major way? So that would be the first topic, right, and one that we were running around talking about a lot. It's got a lot of support. It's lots of people say right away, that sounds like that would be very interesting. It's a good idea. We do need to move forward in a very aggressive and liberating ways from a thought perspective to get people to think differently, unshackle themselves as to all what the problems and hindrances are in cyber, is to start thinking about, if we really thought we could do that or wanted to try to do that, would we actually sit down and take on really thorny problems like when I was pitching this to General Kelly and General Mattis about reform for procurement in DoD. Like, if you actually wanted to make the internet safe in 10 years at a minimum for the DoD, they would absolutely have to reform their procurement system, right? Something along those lines. What would we do with our education system? What would be the national objective in our education system in order to make that a reality for folks who are in school today, right? Would we own quantum computing as a nation in the sense of a leadership perspective? What are we going to do about that? What are we going to do about the lack of integrity in our supply chain of componentry and all the industries that we've allowed to be offshored in the United States for cost reasons and continue to do? Do we want to solve that or not? Right, from a security perspective. These are all huge, thorny kind of things, and almost always when we run into them in speaking about cybersecurity, we shy away from them because we just haven't decided they're important enough yet to decide on, right, and decide in some way definitively. And the point of a cybersecurity moonshot would be to say they all need to be figured out. I'm not saying they'll all be solved, but they all need to be figured out, right, and post haste to get that done. Lots of stuff that will fall underneath that. So that's a topic for conversation that myself and others are advocating and pushing in many places. And then what can you do about that, meanwhile, to make things happen in a hopefully very significant way? And I'll just give you a few examples of things that we've been privileged to be associated with that don't have anything to do with our business, but they all fall under the rubric, if you will, of this kind of moonshot idea, which is how to get a lot of leverage. Right? How can anybody who wants to move the ball forward get a lot of leverage on a very significant problem? The first one would be things of trying to solve workforce issues and education issues. Right? So we all know that there's not enough trained cybersecurity professionals, and we continually hear statistics about how there's going to be less and less of them over time. Now, part of that, I think, is actually technical in nature, and I'll come back to that in a second. But part of that's just, how do you do that? What are we going to do to get efforts really fundamentally associated with that to fix those kind of goals? So one of them I'll just mention here because it's a leverage point that has just been phenomenally well accepted and supported, was something that somebody on my staff, who's way smarter than me, which most people are, and somebody at the Girl Scouts came up with, which was there are 2.8 million Girl Scouts in the United States of America. It's a highly organized organization. It's in every single zip code in the United States, and they have a very known, repeatable, scalable program to earn badges for stuff, actually demonstrable stuff that you can do. So what if they had cybersecurity badges? All right. There are, in the United States today, in the workforce of females cybersecurity professionals in the workforce is 11%. All right. So it's woefully underrepresented relative to STEM, which is woefully underrepresented to the population, right? So can we start to solve some of these really big problems, workforce that is cyber enabled, with part of the nation that is sitting idle for reasons that are not good, right? And bring it to bear in a way that really can make a difference over time, and start early in the education process in a scalable, repeatable manner, right? So we partnered with the Girl Scouts to do this. So Sylvia, the CEO of the Girl Scouts and I yesterday were on Capitol Hill talking with senators and congressmen, and perhaps not surprisingly, the support is off the charts, to do this. And there are 18 cybersecurity badges being introduced to the Girl Scouts starting through K through 12 that are progressively teaching cyber hygiene and cybersecurity skill sets. If you get to the last one, you actually get a job, right? The first one's going to teach you about cyberbullying and your own like people online are not always nice, right? Kind of thing, because these are young ladies in kindergarten, right? And but here's a way to make to take without actually a huge amount of effort, but to take organizations that exist today and try to make a dent in a number of important topics: the lack of cybersecurity skill sets and the massive underrepresentation of women in technology and cybersecurity, right? So get out of I'll call it getting out of the box thinking of how you can use a big leverage point like that, and we're super excited about it. We'll see what happens, right? But so far it's off the charts from a support. Everybody wants to help on that, right? Which is great, and that's exactly what we want, because we can't do everything ourselves, and neither can Sylvia, right? So that's one. The second thing is technical in nature, which kind of goes into why do we have such a dearth of cybersecurity talent in the United States or globally, because you get this in every place you go in the world. And, part of the answer is we need more people, of course, but part of the answer is why do we need more people, right? And the technical aspects of security today, have a couple problems that are not working in unison with each other that are really problematic. One is, can you do a lot more automation when it comes to security, technical automation, to get higher and higher degrees of prevention? So if we use the gunfight knife analogy, right, we're bringing people to a gunfight, where the gunfight here analogy is it's all software. So we're bringing people to a software fight, right, increasingly, and there's reasons for that, which is a lot of the fantastic capabilities in security that exist, and it need to exist because there has to be tons of innovation in security, because no one company can do that. I will stand here and tell you, Palo Alto Networks cannot innovate everything in security. I admit it, right? Nobody can, right? That's why there's so many security companies. That's why there's going to be tons and tons of small security companies, and you want them out there, right? The problem is that how can you get all those fantastic innovations, which have more to do with, in the future, with machine learning and algorithms and data and things that are going to be really important for security, and actually use them in a way. So I would posit another point, which is today the consumption model in security is literally fundamentally broken. It is literally at a breaking point. If you're a CIO or a CISO, the game's up. You cannot run, manage, deploy, staff, pay for the 77th tool that you're going to put in the stack somewhere from a security perspective, and they're not going to do it anymore, right? So fundamentally, something has to change technically here, which is how do you get all the innovation that's needed in security, but actually get it in a model that's consumable, right? So things here that are fundamentally changing. or the models around that. I'll mention ours, which we call the application framework, which is, I'll spare you the details, and figured out the way that you can actually use many security companies' innovations as software applications out of an app store, and they will run on things that you already deployed, right? So I'll spare you the details on that, but that's real. And that is the future of security. So one of the things Michael asked me to talk about was future of the security industry. That's it, right? If I had the privilege to stand here 5 years from today, I'll tell you that I think what the security is going to look like is going to be more security companies. Unbelievably, as that statement may sound, there's going to be more security companies than there are today. And if you were a CIO, you'd blow your brains out if I told you that, because you got to try to figure out which ones to work with. The vast majority of them will be consumed as software applications through an app store on operating platforms, right? That's what's going to happen, has to happen in security, because that's actually how you get innovation from lots of companies, and you can run it, and running it doesn't kill you from a cost and manpower, et cetera, perspective. And the third thing, and I'm just throwing out a few of these, right? These are the big things that have to happen. The third thing is the Cyber Threat Alliance, or things along these lines. And the premise of the Cyber Threat Alliance from the beginning has been that generally, most verticals and industries in the world have decided a long time ago when they're going to compete with each other very ferociously. Whatever they do for a living. But when it comes to cybersecurity, it's important enough they're actually going to work together. That's why we have ISACs and things along those lines. I'm going to share information because it's that important. Because if something's wrong with our industry, cyber-wise, we're all getting a black eye, right? So out of self-interest, sometimes out of just the interest for the good of the nation and our customers, they said, we're going to work together on this. That was true for a very long time, except for the security industry. The security industry very much likes to say to customers, my intelligence is better than this security company's intelligence, and better than that one, and better than that one. Everyone makes the same claims. And that's an archaic concept, right? And it has to change to the point where security companies are going to compete with each other based on what they can do with what they know, not what they know. What they know should be almost a public good, right? I know that sounds crazy for security companies to say, we spend a ton of money on the R&D to get all the threat intelligence things. Yeah, you need to do that. But everybody should have it, right? What has to happen with it is something ideally that would be highly preventative in nature and automated in fashion, so that many attacks can be stopped. And as Michael said, we'll drive up the cost model and destroy the business model for the bad guys, right? So the entire premise behind the Cyber Threat Alliance was to say, can we get the leaders in the security industry together to say, we're actually going to do that. We're actually going to join together. We're going to stand up servers. We're going to use machine language technology, sticks and taxi, and we're going to share all of our threat intelligence all the time, not just the virus total stuff, the good stuff. Share it all the time, and then we all do with it what we can, right? But we'll work more and more with a common base of knowledge around threat intelligence, because it's actually good for the customers if we all knew the same thing, and then we'll distinguish ourselves based on our platforms and what we can do with those things. And that idea has really taken hold. So we're super thrilled to have gotten this off the ground a few years ago, and my hat's off to a lot of my friends at Symantec and McAfee and Checkpoint and Cisco and Fortinet and the founding members, folks that I've known for a long time in this industry at the CEO level, who had the foresight to say, yes, this is the right approach, and we've done that. We're up to 14 members now. That will grow over time. The reason I can tell you it's going to grow over time is that we've been very successful in talking to customers and telling them about the Cyber Threat Alliance and the benefits of that to the customer. And every single customer says, yeah, of course you should do that. That's exactly what you should do. It's good for all of us. And we say, good. So the next security vendor comes through here, ask them if they're a member, right? And we've gotten customers to write in their RFPs, are you a member of the Cyber Threat Alliance? If not, tell me why. Because there are no good answers as to why. If you're not in it, you don't have an answer that's good as to why you're not in it, right? That any customer is going to accept as anything but self-serving. So there will be more members in this, and it's going to continue to grow over time, which is great because we're going to continue to build the base of data that we have from a threat intelligence perspective, and we're going to share it in real time as we are. And the Cyber Threat Alliance, which is now its own standalone organization that we have the privilege of having Michael run, is going to disrupt the adversary playbooks. And they're going to go faster and faster and faster, and they're going to make the adversary change again and change again and change again and change again. And we're going to, at a minimum, put the hurt on their business model, which should help, right? And we think in some fairly fundamental ways. So I know I'm over my time, but I just want to give you some examples of things that are really happening today that are, out of the box thinking that that go back under this big picture of the moonshot, which I encourage you to think about. Love to hear about it, either directly from you or in any way you'd like to get the feedback in. But I think it's time, or we believe it's time that we just have to think fundamentally differently about how are we going to define success in cybersecurity and decide as a nation that it is that important. So let's stop screwing around, right, and get serious, as we know we have been able to do as a nation before when we had issues like this. So thank you very much for giving me a little bit of time. I hope you have a great rest of the event here. And Michael, thanks for giving me a little bit of time in a hurry. It's always good to see you as well. Thank you.